Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, and our Modelo spring road trip continues as we tour Big 12 country and taking a quick pit stop on our way to Provo and Stillwater, Oklahoma, to talk with the first-year head football coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, Eric Morris, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. It's great to have you on, Coach Morris. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Really excited to have you a part of the Big 12. You know, and there's so many things to get to talk with you about, but let's start with your path. You know, you've had a really interesting path. You know, I know when you were on with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3, you mentioned, you know, that many of your mentors told you that you were making career suicide when you took the Incarnate Word job. You know, just tell us about your path and your biggest influences and, you know, the quote-unquote career suicide you took at taking that job.
Yeah, I've had an interesting path. I think, you know, I've always prided myself. I think I'm proving people wrong. I think I had that approach when I was a player, and not many people gave me a chance to play at the Big 12 level and went on to be successful there. And then obviously just had so many great coaches that were around me at that time, with Mike Leach's staff and Mike being, you know, the one that took a chance on me, both as a player and a guy who gave me my first chance as a full-time position coach. And so owe a ton to Coach Leach, obviously. I still model a lot of my program around Mike. In fact, last night we had Pirates Paradise, which is mat drills that we start at 10 o'clock at night. And you know, it's pretty miserable for our kids to sit there and think about it all day. We used to call it midnight maneuvers with Coach Leach, and still, when I call some of the old Leach guys and tell them I'm still doing midnight maneuvers, they think I'm crazy in this era. But yeah, I think, you know, Leach is probably my biggest influence, and then obviously I think, you know, you see Dana Holgorsen and Lincoln Riley and Sonny Dykes, who were my position coaches, are guys that had a big influence on me as well. And but yeah, I mean, taking the Incarnate Word job, I think it was stepping out of the box a little bit, and it was a place that had no history, a place that had no resources. No traditions, and so really it was a blank slate that I could go and start something and see if I could get something started in the Southland. And luckily, you know, early on in that little sequence, our second year there, we signed Cam Ward, who ended up being the first pick of the draft. And I think anytime you're able to get a kid of that caliber, but it wasn't just Cam. I mean, we had really good players around Cam, and were able to win, you know, 2 or 3 championships there in the Southland, and kind of changed the trajectory of that program.
Eric, you were like one of the biggest names out there this offseason. What made Oklahoma State the right fit for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, some of the things here that people think maybe are a turnoff were actually something my family and I were looking for. I mean, the fact that this is a small community. My wife and I both grew up in really small farming communities. And we're at the stage in our life where we have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. And for us to raise those kids in a place like Stillwater was something that was very encouraging for us, something that we were looking for. And so it's been such a welcoming community. I mean, I think it's just been phenomenal for not only me, but my wife and my kids to be able to embrace ourselves in Stillwater and get out in the community and go, you know, experience everything this town's about, and go support the other, you know, programs that are having success. I mean, we've been to a ton of basketball games right now. Obviously, the golf program's been so good for the past, you know, 20 years or so. Been to some baseball games. Wrestling has been phenomenal. I've never watched a wrestling match in my life. I'm like the biggest wrestling fan ever right now. And so it's been good for us to be able to, you know, be at this level, at the P4 level, but also raise my family and be a part of a community that's such a small knit tight family.
Yeah, Oklahoma State wrestling is the best in the Big 12, and it's a really good conference. So it's a great point about Oklahoma State wrestling. We're talking with Eric Morris here. You know, I'm so intrigued by how you handle and develop the quarterback position. And look, I mean, there's some big heavy hitters on this list. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward, John Mateer, you know, and now Drew Mestemaker, to name a few. But even some of these guys that are less heralded and maybe haven't gone on to have, you know, Hall of Fame NFL careers like Mahomes, they've all had career years under you. At North Texas going back, you know, before Mestemaker, Chandler Morris had his best season with you as the head coach. And even before him, these guys have sort of outlier seasons when you step in. So, what do you do? How do you coach the quarterback position?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. Nah, I'm just joking. So, and same thing. I think Coach Leach was such an interesting guy in the way he taught the quarterback. And then right after him, I had Coach Kingsbury that I worked for 5 years, and they were two totally different the way that they thought about the position, the way they taught it, the way that you studied, the way that you prepared, the way you did drills. And so I thought I took the positives, from both of them. Mike thought really broadly, and he wanted to see space and not talk about coverage, and he didn't talk about, all the different specifics. I mean, you're going to go through your reads in our offense, and you're going to be really good at it. And then Cliff Kingsbury was so detailed and so organized, and he was Tom Brady's backup for a couple of years, Drew Brees' backup. So he'd been around some of the best minds, and they created all these different quarterback notes and the way that they would challenge one another and study. And so we've kind of put together a little system that combines some of that together. And I think just the way that we do it in the meeting room, and then the way that transfers from the meeting room to the practice field. And then ultimately, we want to get them ready from Monday till Friday, and Saturday, like, we don't do much with them. Really, it's almost the opposite. Like, we give them the keys to the car. We allow them to make checks out there if they're seeing stuff. I want them to be super comfortable on game day and be able to have some ownership in what they're doing on game day. And so, and I don't do this alone. I mean, at Incarnate Word, and, I have Mac Leftwich, who's now the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech, was my quarterback coach, and now I have a guy named Sean Brophy who played quarterback for me at Incarnate Word. And so I've had some really good people around me, too, that have helped me get these guys ready to go out there and perform on Saturdays.
And tell us how you recruited Drew Mestemaker as a guy that did not play quarterback in high school.
Yeah, by fate, by luck, don't know what it is yet, but no, so excited that we have Drew. Now, the one thing I think that's impressive, and Drew didn't play, and obviously, I had a key in a friend of mine who's a quarterback coach. They called me and told me he saw Drew throw, thought, how good he was at just purely throwing the ball. Didn't know, if the kid could process information or go out there and do what he's doing on Saturdays. But I think, I've never cared who is the guy that's pulling the trigger. Like, I've always been fair, and whoever gives us the best chance to win is going to go out there and play for us. And so, I think Drew was shocked when, he came in as a freshman walk-on, didn't play in high school. And then all of a sudden, a month and a half into camp, he's our backup quarterback, and he's going out there and getting reps, and he had beat out these 3 other scholarship guys that we had that were older. I think that was kind of Drew's first moment. He's like, holy smokes, that coach believes in me a little bit. And then, we played really we played at Texas Tech. We were getting beat at North Texas Drew's freshman year, and so just kind of in some mop-up duty. Drew goes out there in the last 2 drives and leads 2 amazing drives, scores a touchdown on one of them. So I think that was kind of the first moment looking at Drew in the huddle, realizing, hey, he wasn't anxious out there. He wanted to go out there. He didn't stutter when he was making the play calls to the huddle. He had the confidence about him out there communicating to the guys, and goes down there and scores a touchdown and runs off in Jones AT&T Stadium and chest bumps a couple guys and scored his first college touchdown. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first time I'm like, okay, this kid has a little moxie about him and has a little swagger about him. And it's not only is he a good practice player, but I think he might be able to do this in a real-life game.
Mm.
Well, and Eric, I remember before a North Texas game, you were telling us kind of your recruiting philosophy and like how you find some of these hidden gems. Caleb Hawkins, the incredible year he had at running back. I think you offered him after watching him play basketball when he had just a couple of sick highlight reel dunks. And then I think you said you offered Baker Mayfield after watching him play baseball. So can you elaborate on some of those stories and how you find these guys?
Yeah, I liked all the guys had good tape, good football tape. I liked him before I saw him play the second sport. So, but I've always really believed in going and watching these guys. I think it's really hard to see, a guy's expressions on the football field, the way he communicates with his teammates, leadership traits, just how he handles adversity, how he's going to respond, what's his body language like. And it's hard to tell with a kid in a helmet and in this full gear out there on a football field. I think really watching them, in these different sports, especially basketball. I love watching basketball and watching them communicate and see what kind of teammate they are. But yeah, all these guys, when you go out and watch them and you watch them, they get these different traits and athletic abilities. I think from throwing a ball, from spatial awareness, from playing with their eyes up and seeing defenses. And so I've always loved to go and see just what kind of athlete they are. And Mike Leach told me a long time ago, I was the receivers coach at Washington State, and I went to watch a receiver, and I filmed him on my iPhone for Mike to send back some video, and I only filmed him catching the ball because he's a receiver. And so Mike sent back to me, and he said, "Well, did you film him throwing the football?" And I said, "No, Coach, I didn't film him throwing it. Like, he's a receiver. Why would I film him throwing it?" And he said, "Well, usually guys that have grown up playing catch their whole life, they're really good at throwing it too. The best receivers I've ever had know how to throw it." He said, well, he's not going to be the quarterback for us, but he at least looks natural throwing the football. I remember thinking to myself, like, what am I even doing? So I went back to that school, and I filmed the receiver throwing the ball. Like, I actually did it. And I was, 23. Like, I remember telling, one of my fellow teammates back at the time that was a new coach in it, that how crazy Mike Leach was. He wanted me to film the receivers throwing the football. But now, like, as I've evolved and my mind, like, kind of thinks around it, I actually think it's pretty smart. And I think that guys that know how to, if you really watch a guy that knows how to throw a football, like, he usually has pretty good ball skills, even if he's a receiver or running back.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Cannot wait to visit with you at Media Days here in a few months. Have a great spring, Coach. Thanks so much for your time. Be well.
God bless, guys. Have a great week.
You too. Take care. Oklahoma State football coach Eric Morris is joining us here on Big 12 Radio as part of our spring caravan. This is our Modelo spring road trip, heading out across Big 12 country and making a stop here at Oklahoma State. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.